Night settles slowly, like a soft tide pulling the world into stillness. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the ocean, where the horizon dissolves into darkness and the surface of the water reflects nothing but a quiet, endless void. The sea stretches farther than the eye can follow, vast, deep, and largely untouched by human understanding. More than 70% of this planet is covered by ocean, yet most of it remains unexplored, hidden beneath layers of pressure, cold, and silence. As you listen closely, the familiar sounds of land begin to fade. No voices, no footsteps, only the distant rhythm of waves. And beneath that surface, something else. Not a sound, not a shape, just a feeling. The subtle, almost unexplainable sensation that you are not alone. That somewhere below, in the darkness where light has never reached, something may be watching. Humans have always feared the dark, but more than that, we fear what might exist within it. The ocean amplifies that fear in a way nothing else can. It is not just darkness, it is depth, pressure, distance, and the knowledge that we have barely scratched the surface of what lies beneath. And so, a quiet question begins to form, almost without permission. What if something is still down there? Before we go deeper, take a moment to settle in. If you enjoy drifting into these quiet, thought-provoking explorations, consider subscribing and following the channel. It helps guide more journeys like this into the unknown. Now, let's return to the water. Long before this moment, long before cities, before ships, before human curiosity ever touched the ocean, there existed a creature that ruled these depths with absolute dominance. Not a myth, not a legend, but something real. Its name was Megalodon. Even today, no human has ever seen a living megalodon. But we know it existed because of what it left behind. Massive fossilized teeth, some as large as a human hand, scattered across ancient seabeds and preserved in stone. From these remnants, scientists have reconstructed a creature that defies comfortable imagination. Megalodon is estimated to have reached lengths of 15 to 20 meters, longer than a city bus, heavier than most creatures that have ever lived in the ocean. But its true power wasn't just its size, it was its design. Everything about it was built for one purpose: to hunt. Its jaws were enormous, lined with multiple rows of thick, serrated teeth. Each bite carried a force powerful enough to crush bone, tear through flesh, and dismantle even the largest prey with terrifying efficiency. This was not a fast, agile hunter like smaller sharks. It didn't need to be. Megalodon moved with overwhelming strength, like a living machine, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. And what did it hunt? Creatures that would seem enormous to us even today. Ancient whales, large marine mammals, anything that crossed into its range. In its time, Megalodon didn't just sit near the top of the food chain, it was the top. There were few, if any, predators that could challenge it. It's important to pause here and understand something subtle but powerful. Megalodon is not frightening because it might exist, it is frightening because it once did. The ocean has already proven that it can create something this large, this efficient, this dominant. And that realization quietly reshapes how we see the water. Imagine that world for a moment. An ocean where something this massive moves silently beneath the surface. No warning, no sound, just a shadow passing below, and then absence. Life and death decided in an instant, without struggle, without escape. In that ancient ocean, the presence of Megalodon would not have been dramatic or chaotic. It would have been quiet, almost invisible. And perhaps that is what makes it so unsettling even now. Because the ocean today still holds that same silence. We tell ourselves that the world is different now, that science has mapped the seas, that technology has revealed what was once hidden. But that is only partially true. Large portions of the deep ocean remain unexplored. Entire ecosystems exist beyond the reach of regular observation. Creatures appear briefly, only to vanish again into darkness before we fully understand them. And so, the mind begins to connect things that may not belong together. A shadow seen beneath a boat, a distorted shape captured in a shaky video, a story told by someone who swears they saw something too large, too strange to explain. Each piece alone is uncertain, but together they begin to form a pattern, not of evidence, but of possibility. That is where Megalodon lives now, not in the ocean perhaps, but in the space between what we know and what we cannot fully prove. It exists in the tension between science and imagination, between data and instinct. Because while science tells us that Megalodon likely went extinct millions of years ago, something deeper in human psychology resists that final conclusion. We are not just afraid of what is real. We are equally, if not more, affected by what could be real. Megalodon sits perfectly in that space. It is familiar enough to be believable, ancient enough to feel distant, and powerful enough to trigger something instinctive. It represents the ultimate predator, the unseen force beneath the surface, the reminder that humans are not always in control. And perhaps that is the quiet truth behind it all. The fear is not really about a giant shark. It is about the ocean itself, its depth, its silence, its refusal to be fully understood. It is about standing at the edge of something vast and realizing that no matter how much we learn, there will always be more hidden beneath. So when people ask whether Megalodon still exists, the answer from science is clear. Most likely, it does not. But the persistence of the question reveals something more interesting than the answer itself. It reveals that the unknown still has power over us. And as long as the ocean remains dark, deep, and only partially explored, that feeling will never completely disappear. Somewhere, far below the reach of light, the water is still moving. And yet, even something as powerful as Megalodon was not immune to change. The ocean, for all its vastness, is not a static world. It shifts, slowly but relentlessly, guided by forces far larger than any single creature. Over millions of years, temperatures rise and fall, currents reshape entire ecosystems, and the delicate balance that sustains life begins to tilt in new directions. For a time, Megalodon existed in near-perfect alignment with its environment, a predator built precisely for the world it inhabited. But that world did not remain the same. Around 3 million years ago, the Earth entered a period of significant climatic transition. Global temperatures began to drop. Oceans, once warmer and more stable, started to cool. For smaller creatures, for adaptable species, such changes could be endured, even exploited. But for something as massive as Megalodon, the stakes were far higher. Warm waters were not just a preference, they were a requirement. These regions supported the ecosystems Megalodon depended on, providing both suitable conditions for its physiology and an abundance of prey. As the planet cooled, those warm zones began to shrink, fragmenting into smaller and less reliable habitats. The vast, open hunting grounds that once sustained a giant predator slowly contracted, forcing Megalodon into narrower, more competitive spaces. And with the loss of habitat came another, more immediate threat: the loss of food. Megalodon's size, once its greatest advantage, became a demanding burden. A body that large required an enormous and constant intake of energy. It could not afford long periods without successful hunts. It depended heavily on large prey, particularly ancient whales and other sizable marine animals. But as the climate shifted, so too did the behavior of these creatures. Whales began to change their migration patterns, adapting to new temperature gradients and food distributions. Some populations declined, others moved into regions less accessible or less suitable for Megalodon's hunting style. The result was subtle at first: slightly longer hunts, slightly fewer successful captures. But over time, those small inefficiencies compounded into a serious problem. In the natural world, survival is not determined by a single failure, but by the accumulation of many small disadvantages. At the same time, Megalodon was no longer alone at the top. Evolution does not pause, even for giants. As Megalodon struggled to maintain its dominance, new predators were emerging, different in strategy, different in design. Among them were the early ancestors of what we now recognize as orcas, or killer whales. Unlike Megalodon, these hunters did not rely solely on size and raw force. They brought something else into the equation: coordination. Orcas hunted in groups. They communicated, adapted, and executed complex strategies. Where Megalodon was a solitary powerhouse, orcas were a collective intelligence. They could outmaneuver prey, exhaust it, isolate it, and attack with precision. Individually, they may not have matched Megalodon's size, but together they represented a new kind of threat, one that strength alone could not easily overcome. This shift marked a deeper change in the ocean's hierarchy. The age of solitary dominance was giving way to an age of adaptability and cooperation. In such an environment, being the biggest was no longer enough. One had to be flexible, efficient, and capable of responding quickly to change. Megalodon, built for a more stable world, struggled to keep pace. And then there was the question of reproduction. Quiet, often overlooked, but absolutely critical. For a species to survive, it must not only endure, it must replace itself. Evidence suggests that Megalodon likely gave birth in warm, shallow coastal waters, areas that served as nurseries for its young. These environments offered protection, abundant food, and conditions suitable for early development. But as global temperatures dropped and ecosystems shifted, these regions became less reliable. Shallow waters grew colder, habitats became unstable, and perhaps most importantly, they became more dangerous. Younger megalodons, smaller and more vulnerable, would have faced increasing threats, not just from environmental stress, but from other predators. If fewer juveniles survived to adulthood, the population would slowly decline. Not dramatically, not in a single catastrophic event, but quietly, generation by generation. Fewer births, fewer survivors, fewer hunters. Extinction, in this sense, is not an event, it is a process. There was no final battle, no singular moment where the last megalodon disappeared beneath the waves. Instead, there was a gradual fading, a long, slow retreat from dominance into absence. The oceans did not suddenly lose their greatest predator, they simply stopped sustaining it. And eventually, without enough individuals to maintain a viable population, Megalodon was gone. But if that is the case, if the scientific narrative is so consistent, so grounded in evidence, then why does the question remain? Why, even now, do so many people feel that Megalodon might still be out there? The answer begins, once again, with the ocean itself. Despite centuries of exploration, mapping, and technological advancement, the ocean remains one of the least understood environments on Earth. Vast regions of the deep sea have never been directly observed. Entire ecosystems exist in darkness, beyond the reach of routine study. This creates what could be called a gap in knowledge, a space where certainty ends and speculation begins. And human minds are not comfortable with empty spaces. When we encounter something we cannot fully explain, we tend to fill in the gaps. Not always with facts, but with possibilities. The less we know, the more room there is for imagination. In the case of the ocean, that imagination often takes on a darker tone. Now add to that the influence of modern technology. A single video, captured under poor conditions, a shadow moving beneath a boat, a large shape passing through murky water, can spread across the world in hours. The footage may be unclear, distorted, lacking any reliable scale or reference. But clarity is not always what captures attention. It is ambiguity. Ambiguity invites interpretation. A blurred image does not say what it is. It allows the viewer to decide. And when people are already aware of Megalodon, when that idea already exists in the collective consciousness, it becomes an easy conclusion to reach. Not because it is the most logical, but because it is the most compelling. The internet amplifies this effect. Each share, each comment, each reaction reinforces the possibility. The original uncertainty transforms into something that feels like evidence, even if nothing new has been proven. Over time, the distinction between unexplained and confirmed begins to blur. But beneath all of this lies something deeper than technology. It is human psychology. We are not purely rational beings. We do not always choose the explanation that is most accurate. We often choose the one that feels most significant. And fear, especially ancient, instinctive fear, carries a unique weight. There is something deeply rooted in the idea of being hunted, of not seeing the predator, of existing in an environment where you are not in control. The ocean triggers these instincts in a way few other places can. It removes visibility, it removes certainty, it places us in a position of vulnerability. Megalodon fits perfectly into that psychological space. It is not just a large animal, it is a concept, a representation of the ultimate unseen predator. It embodies the fear of something vast, silent, and beyond our ability to confront. And because we know it once existed, that fear feels justified, even if the current evidence does not support its survival. In this way, Megalodon has become more than a species. It has become a symbol of the unknown beneath the surface, a symbol of the limits of human understanding, a symbol of the quiet realization that, despite everything we have discovered, there are still places on this planet that remain beyond our full comprehension. So when people say they believe Megalodon might still be alive, they are not always making a scientific claim. Sometimes they are expressing something less precise but more fundamental. They are acknowledging that the world is still, in many ways, mysterious. And as long as that mystery remains, deep, dark, and just out of reach, the idea of Megalodon will continue to drift through our thoughts, like a shadow beneath the water, never fully seen, never entirely gone. And yet, despite everything we understand about extinction, adaptation, and the slow reshaping of life beneath the waves, the question does not fade. Instead, it returns, again and again, carried not by data, but by images, fragments, moments captured just long enough to unsettle, but never long enough to resolve. A shadow moves beneath the surface. A fin, larger than expected, cuts briefly through the water before disappearing. A video, shaking, unfocused, shows something vast passing under a boat, its outline unclear, its scale impossible to measure. These are the pieces most often presented as evidence, not clear sightings, not confirmed observations, but glimpses. And it is precisely their incompleteness that gives them power. When something is fully visible, it can be understood. When it is not, the mind begins to work. Consider the nature of water itself. Light behaves differently beneath the surface. It bends, scatters, fades. Colors disappear. Shapes stretch and distort. Depth becomes difficult to judge. A creature only a few meters below can appear much larger, much farther, or much closer than it truly is. Without a stable frame of reference, without something familiar to compare against, the brain is left to estimate. And estimation, under uncertainty, often leans toward exaggeration. A shadow becomes a form becomes a possibility, and that possibility, shaped by expectation and memory, becomes something far more specific. Megalodon. But what are these images really? A large, dark shape moving beneath a vessel could be a whale, one of the many species that still traverse the oceans today, some reaching sizes that rival the largest creatures known to history. Seen from above, partially obscured by waves and light distortion, even a known animal can appear unfamiliar. A wide, slow-moving silhouette could be a whale shark, the largest fish alive today. Gentle, filter-feeding, entirely uninterested in humans, yet massive enough that, without context, it can seem almost unreal. Its movement is smooth, its body broad, its presence quiet. In unclear footage, it does not announce itself as harmless. And then there are the countless ways perception can mislead. A camera tilts, the horizon shifts. The absence of scale turns a moderate-sized object into something enormous. A passing shadow, aligned with the angle of the sun, stretches across the water, doubling or tripling in apparent size. Even the motion of the water itself, waves rising and falling, can give the illusion that something beneath is larger, faster, or more deliberate than it truly is. The human eye is not designed for perfect measurement. It is designed for survival. It prioritizes recognition over precision, speed over accuracy. And when confronted with something unclear, especially in an environment as unfamiliar as the open ocean, it defaults to caution. Better to assume the shape is larger. Better to assume the movement is intentional. Better to assume the unknown might be dangerous. This is not a flaw. It is an adaptation. But when that adaptation meets modern technology, when uncertain images are recorded, replayed, shared, and interpreted, the result is something different. The moment becomes repeatable, the ambiguity becomes permanent, and the interpretation begins to solidify. A video is watched once, and it is unclear. Watched again, it becomes suggestive. Watched a third time, with the idea of Megalodon already in mind, it becomes convincing. Not because the image has changed, but because the viewer has. And so, what begins as uncertainty slowly transforms into belief. Yet, when we shift perspective, when we step away from the emotional pull of these images and examine them through a scientific lens, the structure begins to change. Science does not ask whether something is possible in imagination. It asks whether it is supported by evidence. And in the case of Megalodon, that evidence is strikingly absent. For a creature of such immense size to exist today, it would have to leave traces. Not subtle, ambiguous impressions, but consistent, measurable signs. Physical remains, tissue, bone, or at the very least, recent fossil evidence. Genetic material, DNA collected from water samples, as is now possible through environmental sequencing techniques. But none of these have been found. No verified Megalodon tissue, no confirmed DNA, no modern fossil indicating recent survival. This absence is not a small detail, it is a central problem, because large organisms interact constantly with their environment. They feed, they move, they shed biological material, they leave marks on prey, on ecosystems, on the patterns of life around them. A predator the size of Megalodon would not be invisible in this sense. Its presence would ripple outward, affecting multiple layers of the marine system. But those ripples are not observed. Marine biologists study whale populations, tracking migration, injury patterns, and mortality rates. If a predator capable of targeting large whales still existed, there would be signs, distinctive bite marks, unusual attack patterns, unexplained declines in specific regions. Yet the data does not show this. The same applies to other large marine animals. There is no consistent evidence of interaction with a predator of Megalodon's scale. No recurring anomalies that point to something beyond known species. And then there is the question of population. No species survives as a single individual. For Megalodon to exist today, it would require a breeding population, a group large enough to maintain genetic diversity and reproduce across generations. This implies not just one hidden creature, but many. A network of individuals moving through the oceans, feeding, migrating, reproducing. Such a population would be difficult, if not impossible, to conceal entirely. They would require territory, nursery areas, migration routes, feeding grounds. Each of these would intersect, at some point, with regions monitored by modern technology, satellites, sonar systems, research vessels, commercial shipping routes. The ocean is vast, yes, but it is not untouched. Even the deepest regions are not completely isolated. Sound travels efficiently through water, movement can be detected, biological traces can be collected. To believe that an entire population of giant predators exists without leaving a single confirmed trace is to accept a scenario that grows increasingly improbable the more closely it is examined. This is where science draws its conclusion, not from a single piece of evidence but from the consistent absence of many. Megalodon, by all available data, is almost certainly extinct, not hidden, not waiting, not observing from the depths. Gone. And yet, even this conclusion does not fully erase the feeling, because the ocean remains what it has always been, deep, dark, and only partially understood. Science can close one question, but it cannot eliminate the space from which that question emerged. There will always be shadows beneath the surface. There will always be moments where something moves just out of sight, where the mind fills in what the eye cannot confirm. And in those moments, the name returns, not as evidence, but as an echo. And still, even after the logic settles and the evidence grows quiet, the ocean does something unexpected. It reminds us, gently, almost patiently, that not everything strange is impossible. Not everything unfamiliar is imagined. Sometimes, what we struggle to believe is simply something we have not yet fully seen. There are creatures alive today that for centuries were dismissed as myths. The giant squid, for example, once lived only in stories, tales told by sailors who spoke of enormous tentacles rising from the depths, of shadows moving beneath ships, of something vast and unseen pulling quietly through the dark water. For a long time, these stories were treated as exaggerations, products of fear and isolation, and yet, eventually, cameras captured it. Not clearly at first, not completely, but enough to confirm what had once been doubted. A real animal, massive, elusive, dwelling in the deep. This matters, not because it proves that every myth is true, but because it shows how easily truth can exist just beyond the edge of confirmation. Then there is the Greenland shark, slow, ancient, almost ghost-like in its presence. It moves through cold, dark waters, often far below where humans regularly observe. Some individuals are believed to live for hundreds of years, entire lifetimes passing in near invisibility. It does not dominate the ocean. It does not announce itself. And yet, it exists, quietly, persistently, outside the awareness of most of the world. And whales, creatures so large that even a brief glimpse of their bodies can distort perception. A single section of a whale rising through the surface, a curved back, a fin, a tail slipping beneath the waves, can seem disconnected from the whole. Without context, without scale, the mind struggles to assemble what it sees. The partial becomes the exaggerated, the familiar becomes something else. Even the whale shark, the largest fish alive today, can be mistaken under the right conditions. Its immense body, its slow and steady movement, its presence just beneath the surface, these qualities, when viewed through unclear water or unstable footage, can easily be interpreted as something more mysterious, more threatening than it truly is. What these creatures share is not just size, it is rarity. They are not seen often. They do not live where humans regularly look, and when they do appear, it is usually brief, incomplete, and without explanation. That combination, large, rare, and partially observed, creates the perfect conditions for misunderstanding. The ocean does not need to invent monsters. It already contains forms strange enough, large enough, and unfamiliar enough to challenge our expectations. Creatures that seem almost designed to unsettle, not because they are dangerous in the way we imagine, but because they do not fit neatly into what we expect reality to look like. And this leads to a quiet but important realization. The ocean is already mysterious enough. It does not require Megalodon to feel vast, or unknown, or unsettling. Its depth, its silence, its hidden ecosystems, these are more than sufficient. The presence of real, extraordinary life forms is enough to remind us that our understanding is incomplete. And yet, the thought lingers, not because it is supported, but because it is difficult to fully dismiss. So, let us follow that thought for a moment, not as a belief, but as a hypothesis. If Megalodon were still alive today, how would it exist? The first constraint would be location. The modern ocean is not the same as it was millions of years ago. Surface waters are busy, noisy, and heavily monitored. Ships cross vast distances. Sonar systems scan for movement. Satellites track patterns from above. A creature of enormous size moving regularly through these regions would almost certainly be detected, so it would have to live deeper, far below the surface, in regions where light does not reach, where human observation is limited, where pressure is immense and temperatures are low. In such an environment, visibility is reduced, and the chances of remaining unseen increase. It is the only place where something large might avoid constant detection. But living in the deep introduces a different set of challenges. Food becomes scarce. Unlike surface ecosystems, where sunlight supports abundant life, the deep ocean operates on limited energy. Organisms are fewer, often smaller, and more widely dispersed. For a creature the size of Megalodon, this presents a serious problem. Its body, even if adapted, would still require significant energy to function. Hunting would need to be efficient, but opportunities would be limited. This leads to a second constraint: behavior. Such a creature could not afford constant movement. It would need to conserve energy, traveling slowly, waiting longer between hunts, choosing targets carefully. Perhaps it would rely on occasional large prey, injured whales, drifting carcasses, rare encounters with sizable animals passing through deeper layers. It would not resemble the dominant, constantly active predator of the past. It would resemble something quieter, rarer, almost withdrawn, a presence that survives not by power, but by restraint. And yet, even with these adaptations, another problem remains: detection. The deep ocean is not completely silent or unobserved. Sound travels efficiently through water, especially at certain depths. Large movements create acoustic signatures. Sonar systems, used for navigation, research, and military purposes, scan wide areas. While not everything is continuously monitored, patterns do emerge. An animal of extreme size moving repeatedly through certain corridors would likely be noticed over time. And beyond sound, there are other traces. Biological material, shed skin cells, waste, microscopic fragments, can now be detected through environmental DNA sampling. This method allows scientists to identify species present in a region without ever seeing them directly. If a population of large predators existed, their genetic signatures would likely appear in these datasets. But they do not. Which brings us to the most critical limitation of all. A single individual cannot sustain a species. For Megalodon to exist today, there must be more than one. There must be a population, a group large enough to reproduce, to maintain genetic diversity, to raise offspring that survive into adulthood. This implies mating behavior, breeding grounds, juvenile habitats. Each of these stages introduces vulnerability. Young individuals would be smaller, less capable, more exposed. They would need environments where they can grow safely, areas that are, by necessity, closer to the surface, richer in food, more stable in conditions. These are precisely the areas most likely to be observed by humans. And yet, no such evidence exists. No sightings of juveniles, no unexplained populations, no consistent patterns that suggest the presence of a hidden breeding cycle. The more closely the hypothesis is examined, the more complex it becomes, and the more unlikely. It is not impossible in the abstract sense. The ocean is vast, and certainty is rarely absolute. But practicality matters. Biology imposes constraints. Energy, reproduction, interaction, these are not optional. And within those constraints, the idea begins to strain. What once felt like a possibility starts to resemble something else. a reflection, not of the ocean itself, but of our relationship with it. Our desire to believe that something enormous could still be out there, that beneath all our knowledge, something has escaped understanding, that the world still holds secrets large enough to surprise us. In that sense, the question of Megalodon's survival becomes less about the creature and more about us, about how we respond to the unknown. Because even when the evidence points in one direction, the imagination continues to explore another. Not to replace truth, but to sit beside it, quietly, persistently, like a shadow moving just beyond the edge of sight. And still, after all the reasoning, all the evidence, and all the quiet dismantling of possibility, one final thought remains, soft, persistent, and difficult to ignore. What if, one day, something rises from the deep? Not a shadow this time, not a distorted shape caught in uncertain light, but something unmistakable, massive, defined, real. A body breaking the surface of the ocean with a presence so undeniable that no explanation can soften it, no reinterpretation can reduce it, no doubt can remain. If Megalodon were to appear again, clearly, undeniably, the first thing to collapse would not be ships or coastlines. It would be certainty. For centuries, science has built its understanding of extinction on evidence, on patterns, on the absence of continued existence. A living megalodon would not just be a discovery, it would be a contradiction, a disruption of what we believe we know about evolution, survival, and the limits of life in the modern ocean. The reaction would be immediate. Across the world, the image would spread within minutes. Not a rumor this time, not a fragment, but a confirmed reality. News networks, research institutions, governments, everyone would respond at once. The question would no longer be whether it exists, but what it means. For the public, the response would be visceral. Fear would come first. Not necessarily because people expect to be hunted, but because something ancient, something immense, something long believed to be gone, has returned. Beaches would empty, shipping routes would be reconsidered, every large shadow beneath the water would carry a new weight. But alongside fear, there would be fascination. A living relic from deep time, a predator that once ruled the oceans, now moving again beneath modern skies. Cameras would follow, satellites would track, expeditions would be launched. The desire to see, to understand, to document would be overwhelming. And this is where the response begins to change. Because observation does not remain passive for long. Scientists would seek data, movement patterns, feeding behavior, genetic material. They would want to understand how such a creature survived, how it adapted, what it eats, how it reproduces. Each answer would lead to more questions, and each question would justify further intervention. Tracking devices might be deployed, monitoring systems expanded. The ocean, already observed, would become more intensely scrutinized. Governments, too, would act, but from a different perspective. A creature of that size, that power, existing in shared global waters, would not be viewed simply as a biological curiosity. It would be considered a variable, a factor that could influence shipping, fisheries, tourism, even international relations. Policies would emerge, restrictions would be debated, control in some form would be attempted. And yet, the most profound impact might not be on human systems, but on the ocean itself. The reintroduction, or rediscovery, of an apex predator at that scale would shift the balance of marine ecosystems. Large whales, already navigating complex migratory patterns, could become prey or competitors. Their behavior might change, routes altered, populations redistributed. Smaller species, indirectly connected through the food web, would feel the effects as well. Ecosystems are not static. They respond to pressure, to presence, to the reordering of relationships. A single dominant predator can reshape entire environments. And in this case, the environment has already adapted to its absence. Bringing that presence back, even if it had somehow persisted unnoticed, would not restore a previous balance. It would create a new one, unpredictable, dynamic, and potentially unstable, which leads to a question more difficult than any scientific measurement. What should be done? If Megalodon exists, is it something to protect or something to control? On one hand, it would represent a living connection to Earth's distant past, a species that survived against extraordinary odds. From a conservation perspective, it could be seen as invaluable, irreplaceable, deserving of protection at the highest level. On the other hand, its size, its power, and its unpredictability would make it impossible to ignore as a potential threat. Not necessarily through direct aggression, but through sheer presence. A collision with a vessel, an unexpected interaction, a disruption of existing systems. Any of these could have consequences far beyond what we are accustomed to managing. And so, the tension would emerge: preserve or eliminate, study or restrict, protect or neutralize. These are not just scientific decisions. They are reflections of how humanity responds to uncertainty, to fear, to the unknown made real. Because when something challenges our understanding so completely, our instinct is not always to observe, it is to act, and that is where the deepest risk lies. Not in the creature itself, but in the reaction it provokes. History offers quiet reminders of this pattern. When confronted with unfamiliar species, especially those perceived as dangerous, human responses have often leaned toward control, containment, or removal. Not always out of necessity, but out of discomfort, out of the need to reassert a sense of stability. Megalodon, if real in the present, would test that instinct at a scale never seen before. Would we allow it to exist, to move freely, to remain part of a world that is not entirely ours? Or would we attempt to define it, limit it, reshape its existence to fit within our expectations? In that sense, the reappearance of Megalodon would not just be a biological event, it would be a mirror, reflecting not what the ocean contains, but how we respond to what we cannot control. And perhaps that is the quiet conclusion waiting beneath all of this. Because when the question finally settles, when the imagination slows and the evidence speaks, the answer becomes clear in its own understated way. Megalodon is almost certainly extinct. The ocean no longer holds that particular giant. The patterns of life, the absence of trace, the structure of ecosystems all point in the same direction. Not hidden, not waiting, not surviving in silence. Gone. And yet, something remains. Not in the water, but in the mind. Megalodon continues to exist, not as a living organism, but as an idea. A presence shaped by memory, by fear, by the awareness that the Earth once produced something so immense, so efficient, so beyond ordinary scale. It lives in stories, in images, in the quiet tension felt when looking out over deep water. It appears in blurred footage, in whispered accounts, in the subtle discomfort of not knowing what lies below. It has become part of culture, part of imagination, part of the way we interpret the unknown. And perhaps that is why it persists, because the true source of unease has never been the creature itself. It is the realization that there are still things we do not fully understand, that the world, even now, is not completely mapped, not entirely explained, not fully contained within the boundaries of knowledge. The ocean, in particular, resists closure. It remains vast, dark, and patient. And in that space, the mind continues to wander, not always toward what is true, but toward what feels possible. So in the end, the question shifts. It is no longer, does Megalodon still exist? It becomes, why do we need it to? Why does the idea endure even when the evidence fades? The answer is quieter than expected. because it gives shape to something deeper, the fear of what we cannot see, the awareness of what we cannot control, and the understanding that no matter how far we have come, there will always be depths, both in the ocean and within ourselves, that remain unexplored. Somewhere beyond the reach of light, the water is still, and within that stillness, the unknown remains.